When people think of the word Indian, many people fail to realize that native Indians have such a diverse range in phenotype. There are people of literally all shades and features living in the South Asian country. Most people know that the majority of Indians are descended from two main groups, the Dravidians and Indo-Aryans, with all modern Indians having a high degree of intermixing. However, it would surprise many to know that a large number of Indians are actually more closely related to the surrounding East and Southeast Asian populations. These are the people of the northeast corner of India, along with parts of the nations of Nepal and Bhutan. These people groups are descended from various migrations of humans from neighboring Tibet and Burma, and believe it or not, actually predate the Indo-Aryan groups that migrated to the region by a few thousand years. Now, Northeast India includes the states of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Tripura, and are sometimes referred to as the Seven Sister States of India, except for Sikkim. And it's a little odd because the country of Bhutan is nestled right in between Sikkim and the Seven Sister States, having sustained its independence from the British Raj. Nepal is located directly west of Sikkim and is slightly elongated horizontally and is often joked as being India's 30th state because it's so similar culturally. However, I'm including it in this video since the mountainous northern Nepal is very different from tropical southern Nepal. This region acts as a transitional boundary between the vastly differing territories of East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, being a blend of the peoples, cultures, religions, and language of this intersection of civilizations. Even though the southern Nepali or Gurkhas are more closely related to other Indo-Aryans, especially the Paharis of Uttarakhand, the people of northern Nepal are very Asian in appearance, being directly descended from Tibetan peoples that migrated from the Tibetan Plateau through the Himalayan mountain range. These Tibetan people speak a wide variety of languages, and as opposed to the Gurkhas of the south, are predominantly Buddhist as opposed to Hindus, although there are a few Hindu Tibetan tribes. The various Tibetan ethnicities, the largest of which are the Tharu and Tamang, make up around 20 to 30% of Nepal's population, and Indo-Aryan groups make up the other 70 to 80%. The boundary between racial groups is not so cut and dry, however, as many members of the Indo-Aryan groups have a large percentage of East Asian admixture and vice versa, making it a little difficult to distinguish members of certain ethnicities at times. The Indian state of Sikkim was actually the last territory to be admitted into the country of India, and for that reason the culture is a bit different than most of India, with the northern half of Sikkim being made up of mostly the native Sikkimese people, who are again another Tibetan-descended people group, being largely adherents of Buddhism or Christianity. In recent years, a huge wave of Nepali immigrants and refugees from both Nepal and neighboring Bhutan has completely transformed southern Sikkim's ethnic makeup, with Nepali Gurkhas currently being the majority in the state at around 60%. Nepalis also make up a large proportion of the Siliguri corridor, a very narrow passage that connects the Seven Sister States with the state of West Bengal and the rest of India. There's actually a huge diaspora of ethnic Nepalis in the surrounding region, not only in India, with an estimated 10 million people of Nepali descent, that's about 40% of Nepal's population, folks, but also in Southeast Asia, especially northern Burma and the country of Malaysia, where they number nearly 2 million in the region. Bhutan is one of the oldest modern nations in South Asia, being formed around 400 years ago and maintaining its independence, and it's estimated that the population of Bhutan is around 700,000 people, which makes it a rather small fry when compared to other South Asian juggernauts. But wait, you might say, according to official government estimates, Bhutan's population was over 1 million people 40 years ago. How is that possible? Well, funny story about that. The government of Bhutan actually lied about how many people were living in its territory in the official census in order to be admitted into the United Nations, which had a cutoff for admission at 1 million people at the time. Bhutan's population was, in reality, less than a third of this, which made it extremely embarrassing for them 30 years later when the new census revealed the population to be only a fraction of what the government claimed. Similarly to the previous territories, northern Bhutan is mostly descended from Tibetan-related groups that adhere to Buddhism, while the southern portion is mostly the Indo-Aryan, Nepali-descended Lhotshampa who adhere to Hinduism. Ever since the controversial Bhutan Citizenship Act of 1958, the government of Bhutan has been accused of heavily discriminating against the Lhotshampa minority, who used to make up around 40% of the population, but because many have been deported or fled persecution, they are now probably no more than 20%. They inhabit huge refugee camps in India and Nepal, with the American government actually taking in more than 100,000 of these refugees in the past couple decades. The situation has greatly improved in recent years, with many Lhotshampa wanting to return back to their homeland. On a brighter note, northern Bhutan has actually been praised by many Western scholars for being an idealized paradise, where the extremely devout Buddhist population boasts one of the lowest rates of obesity, heart failure, diabetes, with crime being virtually non-existent, with many outside observers contributing this to the people's complete rejection of Western technology and media. Northeast India, with a population of 50 million, is a bit more complicated, with the native peoples not only coming from Tibetan groups, but also from Burmese, Austroasiatic, and even Thai peoples. Austroasiatic is a language family originating from Southeast Asia and possibly being related to the Austronesians of the Philippines and Indonesia, which means that some of the Austroasiatic groups from Northeast India are actually most closely related to groups like the Vietnamese and Cambodians, believe it or not. However, groups in the heartland of India, such as the many Munda peoples, such as the Ho, Santhali, and Korku, undoubtedly have more South Asian genes than Southeast Asian, being an example of groups that retain their original language yet were assimilated into a larger host population. Austroasiatic groups like the Khasi make up the majority of the state of Meghalaya and are almost entirely Christian. Tibetan groups inhabit Arunachal Pradesh, with there being hundreds of different micro-ethnicities that follow various ethnic animistic religions. Ever since the Sino-Indian Wars of the 1960s, the People's Republic of China has claimed the overwhelming majority of Arunachal Pradesh, citing back to a previous treaty before Indian independence that granted the region to the Qing dynasty. However, India refuses to back down and has maintained a strong military presence in the area, as well as the region of Kashmir, also bordering China. Assam is the only Northeast Indian state that has a native Indo-Aryan population, that being the Assamese, who, like the Nepali, have a large amount of East Asian admixture, yet are still very South Asian in appearance. What's confusing is that there's a large minority in Assam known as the Aham, who are actually descended from Thai migrants around 1,000 years ago, yet have since adopted the Assamese language and taken up Hinduism, leading many to think that they are ethnic Assamese. Many Indians and outsiders alike might think that the highest percentage of Indian Christians are found in South Indian states like Goa, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. This is in fact a common misconception, with all of India's Christian majority states being located in Northeast India, that being Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Nagaland. South India does, however, have an overall larger number of Christians than the Northeast. Northeast Indians have historically faced heavy discrimination in other parts of India for differences in appearance, language, religion, but also because of an association with the Chinese, who have historically had very poor and often hostile relations with its southern neighbor. However, in recent years, it's been considered far safer for minority groups in the nation, as integration and internal migration in India has vastly increased. Speaking of internal migration, Northeast India has been one of the regions of India most heavily influenced by migration other than the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Indo-Aryan and Dravidian-speaking people have been migrating to the region for decades now, originating from both within India and the surrounding countries, such as Nepal and Bangladesh. In fact, many native Northeast Indians have accused the government of Bangladesh of artificially changing the ethnic makeup of the region by flooding the Indian states with ethnic Bengalis in an attempt to annex the bulk of the region, which has historically been considered to be a part of Greater Bangladesh. And indeed, it hasn't taken long for Bengali migrants to make up the majority of regions like Tripura and the Barak Valley in Assam, which have historically been inhabited by Tibeto-Burman groups. However, it's important to realize that the majority of ethnic Bengalis settling in the region, even from Bangladesh, are actually Hindus, not Muslims, and thus the religious makeup of the region hasn't changed significantly in the past 20 years. Internal Indian migrants come from many regions of the country, but Hindi-speaking groups such as the Biharis, along with the Nepalis, are especially overrepresented. Northeast India is certainly an interesting place, being at the crossroads of some of the most ancient and influential regions in the world. It's an amalgamation of different ethnicities, cultures, and religions, and hopefully all the conflicts in the region will be resolved quickly and peacefully. Be sure to let me know what state in India you're from, and what your thoughts are on this region and the people that inhabit it. As always, Dekhna ke liye dhanyavad. Thanks for watching. This has been Mason, and I'll see you next time.